Finance Ministry widens scope of service tax exemptions. 3 task forces set up to transform Labuan's economy. Good evening and Salam Malaysia Madani. You're watching Malaysia Tonight. I am Olivia Nicholas. The Finance Ministry, or MOF, has refined the scope for service tax exemptions to alleviate the direct impact on the rakyat's living cost and cascading tax incidences in the logistics sector. Finance Minister to Datuk Sri Amir Hamzah Azizan, through a statement release, said the service tax exemptions for the logistics sector and maintenance services will also help to maintain the competitiveness of the nation's services sector. He said to further preserve the country's competitiveness, the government will also not impose service tax in free trade zones. To ease the tax impact on daily logistics operating activities and ultimately the consumers, the government has agreed on the amendments to Group J, Logistics Services in First Schedule, Service Tax Regulations 2018. Item 1 subsection A in relation to logistics services and Item 1 subsection B on delivery or distribution or transporting services have been merged into a single item. By combining the two items into one, the exemption scope for business-to-business B2B activities has been widened, whereby logistics service providers classified under Item 1 subsection A are now no longer required to incur service tax for acquiring delivery or distribution or transporting services previously listed under Item 1 subsection B. All services under Group J, logistics services provided in or between special area or designated area, are not subject to the service tax except for customs agent services where the tax remains applicable. As the Central Database Hub PADU system registration closes at midnight tonight, the number of individuals updating their information as of noon today has increased to 10.8 million. Chief Statistician Dato Sri Dr. Muhammad Uzair Mahidin said the number was equivalent to 48.3% of the total number of 21.96 million Malaysians aged 18 and above. He is optimistic that the target of 50% of people to register and update their personal information with the PADU system could be reached by midnight.
Jadi seperti yang kita telah lihat dalam banyak inisiatif baru kan, memang kita sukar untuk mencapai satu sendiri yang ID 1%. Jadi sasaran yang kita telah pun dimaklumkan 50% adalah satu perkara yang memang orang kata satu achievement lah.
Dato Sri Dr. Muhammad Uzair also said that since the PADU system was launched on the 2nd of January, the system has continued to function without interruption or downtime despite high traffic volume. According to him, that is one of the proofs that the system has been developed well to ensure that the registration service and the information update process can be done smoothly. After Prime Minister Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim's strong criticism against Western nations over Gaza during his recent visit to Germany, and with international outrage growing over rising Palestinian death toll, an article in the New York Times says Germany's tone on support for Israel has shifted. Its Berlin-based correspondent Erica Solomon wrote recently that Germany increasingly feels awkward in its position as a strong ally of Israel. Interestingly, the article also pointed to a strong point brought home during Dato Sri Anwar's visit to Berlin earlier this month, where he had criticized Western countries for their lack of action against Israeli atrocities in Gaza. However, the article also mentioned that beyond a change in tone, there is a little Berlin is likely to do that is not symbolic unless the United States take tougher measures. The article further pointed out that the most important decision it could make, quoting Jürgen Hard, the foreign policy spokesman for the centre-right Christian Democrats in the parliament, was to restore funding to the main UN agencies aiding Palestinians, UNRWA. Still ahead, said in our business segment, proposed Trans-Borneo Railway project an economic catalyst. The Federal Territories Department has set up 3 task forces to revitalize Labuan's economy. Minister in the Prime Minister's Department, Federal Territories, Dr. Zaliha Mustafa, said the task forces focused on tourism development, the construction of the Labuan-Menumbo Bridge and enhancing transshipment activities are poised to be game changers for Labuan's economic landscape. Dr. Zaliha said, led by the department's Director General and Deputy Director and comprising stakeholders, these task forces have already convened their inaugural meetings. She said the government is committed to implementing actionable strategies promptly, while major initiatives such as the Labuan-Menumbo Bridge will be brought to the attention of the Prime Minister. Highlighting the importance of transshipment activities, Dr. Zaliha affirmed the task force would delve into technical details and policy improvements with plans to engage the Transport Ministry. She said in discussion with Transport Minister Anthony Lok, efforts to enhance connectivity through increased flights to and from Labuan were uncensored, while the Work Ministry would lead a technical study on the proposed Labuan-Menumbo Bridge. The proposed Trans-Borneo Railway project linking Sabah, Sarawak, Brunei and Kalimantan in Indonesia will be an economic catalyst to the Borneo region. Sabah Chief Minister Datuk Seri Haji Noor said once materialized, the project will be impactful to enhance people-to-people connectivity and boosting the economy in the region. Commenting further through a statement released, Dato Sri Hajiji said, economically, the project will facilitate trade, promote growth of industries at the border areas and boost tourism in the Borneo region. The statement mentioned that last November, Works Minister Dato Sri Alexander Nantalengi said his ministry had received a preliminary proposal on the Trans-Borneo Railway project. The statement also mentioned Brunei-based Bruneji Utama Sdn Bhd announced it would be embarking on the Trans-Borneo Railway project, which it proposed to be implemented in 2 phases involving routes spanning 1,620 kilometers. The first phase will connect cities from the west to the east coast, beginning in Pontianak, West Kalimantan and ending in Kota Kinabalu, Sabah, while the second phase will involve North and East Kalimantan, connecting the main route with Samarinda and the new capital of Indonesia, Nusantara. Now on, an economist said the ringgit is expected to maintain its current range of 4 ringgit 72 cent to 4 ringgit 73 cent against the US dollar next week. Bank Muamalat Malaysia Berhad Chief Economist Dr. Muhammad Afzal Nizam Abdul Rashid said next week's hurdle will be the US jobs report and business sentiments. He noted that there will be a slew of job reports such as jobs opening and labour turnover and non-farm payrolls, which is expected to moderate to 198,000 in March from 275,000 in February. In a nutshell, investors will be scrutinizing the incoming data to establish their view on the US Federal Reserve Fund rate outlook, in particular the timing for the rate cut. Dr. Muhammad Afzal Nizam noted that such anxiety would keep the US dollar well supported, as Fed officials seem adamant about keeping the rate higher to quell inflation. On a Friday-to-Friday basis, the ringgit strengthened against the greenback compared with a week earlier. The local note traded higher against the most major currencies as it improved vis-a-vis the Japanese yen, higher against the British pound and rose against the euro. The ringgit also traded higher against Asian currencies as it appreciated against the Thai baht and gained versus the Singapore dollar. Elsewhere, Bursa Malaysia is expected to be cautious sentiment next week, with the FTSE Bursa Malaysia KLCI, FBM KLCI likely to remain stable until new catalysts emerge. Rakuten Trade Sdn Bhd Ikuti Research Vice President Thong Pak Leng expects the benchmark index to trade sideways for the time being until more clarity emerges regarding the anticipated United States interest rate cut. He also anticipates the FBM KLCI to trend within the range of 1,527 to 1,557 next week. He said the FBM-KLCI has remained in the consolidation phase over the past 2 weeks, and despite the ongoing deeper consolidation, the index has consistently remained above the 50-day exponential moving averages. As such, he noted that Rakuten Trade maintains its view that the benchmark index is still consolidating with a slight positive bias, with expectations of it hovering around the 20-day exponential moving averages. Thong believes the consolidation will continue for a while longer, with support levels observed in a range of 1,525 to 1,531, followed by critical support at 1,520 and then 1,508. On a Friday-to-Friday basis, the FBM-KLCI eased 6.32 points to 1,536.07 from last week's 1,542.39. The crude palm oil CPO futures contract on Bursa Malaysia derivatives is expected to trade on a downside bias, as the recent price rally is likely to encourage profit-taking activities. Palm oil trader David Ng said market players will closely monitor the export pace of CPO in the coming weeks to gauge the trend. Therefore, they will see prices trade between 4,150 ringgit and 4,300 ringgit next week. On the other hand, Interbank Group of Companies senior trader Jim Tay said a technical correction is expected to take place next week, with the CPO trading between 3,850 ringgit and 3,950 ringgit a ton. He added that palm oil stocks from Malaysia and Indonesia are plentiful, as buyers from the West Asia, China and India have restocked ahead of the festive season. The total weekly volume fell to 153,796 lots from 432,779 lots in the previous week, while open interest inched down to 284,711 contracts from 288,214 contracts a week before. The physical CPO price for April South stood at 4,360 ringgit a ton. On the other hand, the rubber market is expected to trade range-bound next week, with a tendency to go sideways, as uncertainties in both supply and demand will temper the market. Past president of the Malaysian Rubber Glove Manufacturers Association, Dennis Low, said the incessantly hot weather conditions in rubber-producing countries, which are still prevailing, have contributed to the commodity production challenges. He said there seems to be a lack of interest and excitement to buy and stock up against a prevailing low-yield period because of the ongoing uncanny weather and Ramadan month. He also said poorer output due to the high temperature could maintain the prices, while the threat of the rubber tree disease may trigger some stocking activities. Low also noted that there are still many uncertainties in the global landscape as economies try to grapple with volatile oil and gas while deflating a runaway inflationary landscape. On a weekly basis, the Malaysian Rubber Board's reference price for SMR 20 eased 15.5 cent to 760.5 cent per kilogram on Wednesday from 776.0 cent in the previous week, while latex in bulk gained 5 cent to 767.5 cent per kilogram from 762.5 cent before. United Overseas Bank Malaysia Berhad UOB Malaysia has launched the Business Circle in Malaysia to help prepare the next generation leaders of Asia's family-led firms to run their businesses and fast-track growth. The bank said the Business Circle now has a community of more than 1,000 family-run businesses, from large corporates to small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, across the region, including Malaysia. The initiative was first introduced in Singapore in 2019 and Thailand in 2023. UOB Malaysia Chief Executive Officer Ng Wei Wei, through a statement released recently, said family businesses constitute over 60% of publicly listed companies and an even larger share of private companies in ASEAN, and they play a pivotal role in driving Malaysia's and the region's continued economic growth. Ng said the heads or founders of Malaysia businesses want to ensure that their successors are equipped to drive growth and sustainability, navigate challenges while maintaining the legacy of the business. She added that the business cycle initiative gives their next generation leaders the exclusive opportunity to learn from successful business leaders as well as to connect with local and regional peers who are on the same path as them. China's manufacturing activity expanded for the first time in 6 months in March, offering relief to policymakers even as a crisis in the property sector remains a drag on the economy and confidence. The official Purchasing Managers Index PMI rose to 50.8 in March from 49.1 in February, above the 50 mark, separating growth from contraction. Although the pace of growth was modest, it was also the highest PMI reading since March of last year, when momentum from the lifting of tough COVID-19 restrictions began to stall. Analysts with China Everbright Bank Zhao Mahua said from the indicators domestic supply and demand have improved while homeowner and business confidence is recovering and willingness to consume and invest are increasing. The PMI data showed new export orders rose into positive territory, breaking an 11-month slump, but employment continued to shrink, albeit at a slower rate. Recent upbeat indicators suggest the world's second-largest economy is slowly getting back on better footing, leading analysts to start upgrading their growth forecast for the year. However, a deep slump in the Asian giant's property sector remains a major drag on growth, testing the health of heavily indebted local governments and state-owned banks' balance sheets. Egypt will receive the first tranche of an expanded loan agreement with the International Monetary Fund (IMF) next week. In announcing the matter during a news conference on Saturday, Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouly did not specify the figure, but the IMF said on Friday the expanded $8 billion financial support program enables the immediate release of $820 million. The agreement expands a $3 billion 46-month extended fund facility signed in December 2022, which was put on hold after Egypt did not follow through on pledges to unpeg its currency, speed up the sale of state assets, and implement other reforms. The IMF agreed to widen the agreement after Egypt's economy was further hurt by the Gaza crisis, which slowed the growth in tourism and triggered attacks from Yemen's Houthi group on shipping in the Red Sea, halving Suez Canal revenue. Tourism and shipping are two of Egypt's main sources of foreign exchange. The United States is grappling with a shortage of maintenance workers in the aviation industry, with baby boomers retiring and other changing jobs during the pandemic. This comes as the global fleet of commercial aircraft is set to balloon a third by 2034, involving more than 36,400 vessels, according to a recent study by consulting firm Oliver Wyman. In its wake, spending in the maintenance, repair and overhaul market is projected to grow almost 20% by 2034. But the sector suffers from a shortfall of qualified manpower and an inadequate pipeline of talent. It lacks some 24,000 aviation maintenance technicians in North America, a figure due to reach nearly 40,000 by 2028. This gap is not one that the renowned Aviation High School in Long Island will be able to fill with its cohorts totaling 2,000 students. In the United States, around 4,000 maintenance, repair and overhaul companies employ some 185,000 aviation maintenance technicians and engineers. This form around 44% of the global total, according to the Aeronautical Repair Station Association. In our foreign segment, Israeli attack kills 12 Palestinians waiting for aid. Firefighters have managed to extinguish a blaze that leveled an ammunition warehouse just outside the Indonesian capital after a series of explosions. The first explosion was heard at around 6 p.m. local time on Saturday at a depot used to store expired ammo inside a military complex near Jakarta. 27 fire trucks were deployed to the location and firefighters managed to douse the blaze at 3:45 a.m. on Sunday. Jakarta City Military Chief Muhammad Hassan said the fire has been put out, but they were still conducting the cooling down process to anticipate the possibility of other fire spots. He added there have been no fatalities due to the incident so far. Authorities had evacuated nearby residents to safer areas as the fire tore through the storage facility, but most people have since returned home. He said the military had received reports that shells or other projectiles may have landed in the surrounding areas and urged people not to touch the objects. According to the military commander, the warehouse had no electricity and the explosion might have been caused by unstable expired ammunition. A horrifying incident unfolded near the Kuwait roundabout southeast of Gaza City, where at least 12 Palestinian civilians lost their lives and several others were wounded in an Israeli bombardment and gunfire attack. Eyewitnesses reported that Israeli occupation forces targeted dozens of civilians who were awaiting the arrival of aid trucks at the Kuwait roundabout. The attack involved the firing of shells and indiscriminate gunfire, resulting in the brutal murder of at least 12 civilians and the injury of at least 30 others. More than 32,700 Palestinians, mostly women and children, have been killed in Gaza since the Israeli-Hamas war escalated on the 7th of October, in addition to mass destruction, displacement and famine conditions. To help alleviate the sufferings of Gaza, 2.4 million people, another aid ship was sailing from the Mediterranean island nation of Cyprus to bring 400 tons of food relief as part of a small flotilla. Foreign powers have ramped up aid airdrops, although United Nations agencies and charities warn this falls far short of the dire need. Russian President Vladimir Putin has signed a decree setting out the routine spring conscription campaign, calling up 150,000 citizens for statutory military service. All men in Russia are required to do a year-long military service or equivalent training during higher education from the age of 18. In July, Russia's lower house of parliament voted to raise the maximum age at which men can be conscripted to 30 from 27. The new legislation came into effect on the 1st of January this year. Compulsory military service has long been a sensitive issue in Russia, where many men go to great lengths to avoid being handed conscription papers during the twice-yearly call-up periods. Conscripts cannot legally be deployed to fight outside Russia and were exempted from a limited mobilization in 2022 that gathered at least 300,000 men with previous military training to fight in Ukraine, although some conscripts were sent to the front in error. In September, Putin signed an order called up 130,000 people for the autumn campaign, and last spring Russia planned to conscript 147,000. Next up in sports, Siva Sangari slays El Sherbini in London Squash Classic. We begin our sports segment with squash. National women's ace as Siva Sangari continued her fine run in the inaugural London Squash Classic as she pulled off a huge upset to oust world top player Egyptian Nar El Sherbini in the quarterfinals. The 2022 ASEAN Games champion took 24 minutes to send El Sherbini packing 11-9, 11-9 in the last 8 of the Professional Squash Association PSA World Tour Gold event in Alexandra Palace, London. The world number 16 player will have another chance to stun top 10 players in the tournament as she is set to face world number 4 of Belgium, Nele Gilles, in the semi-finals today. Gilles came from behind to dispose home player Gina Kennedy 6-11, 11-6 11-6, 11-3. Speaking to PSA after the quarterfinal, Siva Sangri was still in disbelief over the fact that she had finally defeated Al Sherbini, who is also the 7-time world champion, for the first time after 3 meetings. Not only scoring her biggest win in her career so far, the 25-year-old also became the first player out of the top 10 to beat the mighty Egyptian since Annie Au of Hong Kong during the first round of Cleveland Classic 2015 in Ohio. The Deputy President of Malaysian Hockey Confederation MHC, Dato' Ahmad Najmi Abdul Raza, has been appointed as the new national team manager. Dato' Ahmad Najmi, who is also the national team committee chairman, replaces Dato' Mirnawan Nawawi. MHC President Dato' Sri Subahan Kamal said Dato' Ahmad Najmi is an experienced person and he will start as team manager with immediate effect.
Barisan kepimpinan KHM kita dah buat keputusan lah. Saya memang dah bincang dengan Dato' Manjid dan Dato' Ahmad Najmi. Kita melantik Dato' Ahmad Najmi sebagai pengurus pasukan. Walaupun beliau adalah pengerusi jawatankuasa pasukan kebangsaan, kami merasakan beliau juga adalah orang yang paling layak kerana beliau juga adalah orang yang hands on dengan pasukan. Jadi untuk pasukan kebangsaan lelaki memang kita telah melantik Dato' Ahmad Najmi.
The National Sports Council has decided not to take further action regarding allegations of sexual harassment involving a para swimming coach towards an athlete under his care, as reported by the mass media previously. The council said the case has been classified as no further action following the police investigation, which did not find evidence to support the allegations. The council, through the Misconduct and Protection in Sports Committee, JSPS, has also conducted a thorough investigation, including interviewing various relevant parties. Based on the findings of the investigation, the council, through the recommendations provided by JSPS, also found no basis or witnesses to support the allegations of misconduct. Therefore, the council said it has decided to reinstate the coach with the responsibility of training national para swimmers who are preparing for the 2024 Paris Paralympic Games soon. Last February, local media reported that the Malaysian Paralympic Council confirmed that a para swimming coach was being investigated for sexually harassing an underage para athlete. That concludes this evening's Malaysia Tonight. In our top story, Finance Ministry widens scope of service tax exemptions. Do tune in to World Today coming up tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. on TV2. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I'm Olivia Nicholas. Thanks for watching. RTM, teman setia Anda.